My nephew got a pretty awesome setup because of his mom's boy, and I still remember the way the house looked as I pulled up, porch light already on even though it was barely late afternoon, curtains fluttering just a little from the cracked living room window. My sister had always kept her home warm, lived-in, welcoming, the kind of place that smelled faintly like laundry detergent and the candles she bought on sale but swore were luxury. I stepped out of the car, stretched my legs, and before I could even grab my luggage from the trunk, I heard the rapid slapping of socks on hardwood. The door burst open. Uncle, my nephew, 13, growing too fast, hair sticking up like he'd just rolled out of bed, launched himself at me. I barely had time to brace before he wrapped his arms around me in a full-force bear hug. I staggered a little, laughing, patting his back. "Missed you too, kiddo," I said, even though his grip was making it hard to breathe. When he finally let go, he was already talking a mile a minute, asking what games I brought, how long I was staying, whether I'd seen the new Fortnite skins, if we could play tonight, right now, immediately. I hadn't even stepped inside yet. My sister appeared behind him, wiping her hands on a dish towel, smiling in that tired, but happy way she did when life was chaotic but still good. She gave me a quick hug at the door and stepped aside so I could lug my bag in. Inside, the house was exactly how I remembered it. Cozy, cluttered, lived in, a half-folded pile of laundry on the couch, a stack of mail on the dining table, a faint smell of dinner still lingering in the air. My nephew darted around me like an excited puppy, showing me the controller he'd been using, the game he'd queued up, the spot on the couch he'd reserved for me. And standing there, luggage still in my hand, exhaustion from the drive fading fast, I felt something settle in me, the familiar comfort of being home with people who loved me, and the quiet promise of 2 weeks filled with laughter, games, and easy company. I had no idea how quickly things were going to shift, but in that moment, everything felt perfect. After dinner, my nephew didn't even try to hide his impatience. The moment my sister set the plates in the sink, he was already tugging at my sleeve like a kid who had waited an entire lifetime, which in his mind he probably had. "Uncle, come on, Fortnite time." I laughed, wiped my hands, and let him drag me toward the living room. The lights were dim except for a single lamp in the corner, giving the whole room that warm, late-night gaming vibe. The TV screen was already glowing, casting blue light across the couch we'd sunk into 100 times before. He tossed me a controller, and I nearly dropped it. He throws like he's trying to win a baseball championship when he's excited. "Okay," he said, settling next to me with the seriousness of a coach preparing his athlete. "We're landing Mega City, and you have to learn to build today. No excuses." I groaned theatrically. "Kid, I barely learned how to jump last time." He cackled. Full, unrestrained belly laughter that echoed off the walls. That laugh alone was worth every long drive I'd ever made to visit him. I clicked into the game, pretending confidence I definitely didn't have, and we dropped into the match. Within seconds, he was cranking 90s like a pro, while I was still trying to figure out which button swapped to my pickaxe. "No, no, no, uncle, hit this, then this. No, not that, oh my god." He doubled over laughing again. "You build like a grandma using a touchscreen for the first time." "Hey," I said, "your grandma could probably beat me." "Yeah," he admitted, "she probably could." Every missed jump, every awkward button mash, every time I accidentally built a wall in front of myself instead of behind, it all sent him into hysterics, and honestly, it made me laugh too. There was something wholesomely ridiculous about it, me, a grown man, sweating like this was an Olympic event, and him laughing like he was watching the world's most entertaining clown show. For a while, nothing existed except the glow of the screen, the ridiculous chaos of the match, and the pure joy of being exactly where I wanted to be. I had no idea the mood was about to crash like a badly timed landing. We were mid-match, well, he was mid-match, I was mid-panic, when I heard footsteps coming down the hallway, heavy, impatient ones, the kind that announce themselves before the person even appears. I didn't think much of it at first. The house wasn't big, and people walked in and out of the room all the time. But the moment he turned the corner, I felt the whole energy shift. My nephew was showing me, for the 10th time, how to build a ramp when the boyfriend stepped in. His jaw was already tight, like he'd been annoyed long before he even saw us. He didn't yell, but his voice came out louder than it needed to be, too sharp for a room filled with laughter and pixelated gunfire. "Why are you using my controller?" My nephew froze mid-explanation, his hands stopped moving, his smile, God, that bright, goofy smile, just collapsed. I could feel him go stiff beside me, like someone had poured ice water down his back. "It's fine, dude," I said lightly, trying to diffuse things before they escalated. "He always uses it when I visit." But the boyfriend wasn't listening. His eyes were locked on the controller like it was a stolen artifact. He walked straight over and snatched it right out of my nephew's hands. No warning, no explanation. Just this sudden, sharp movement that sucked all the fun out of the room. The game immediately disconnected us from the match. The screen dimmed, silence fell. I watched my nephew stare down at his now empty hands, his shoulders curling inward as if he'd done something wrong, something deserving of punishment. His cheeks flushed, not with embarrassment, but with that quiet kind of hurt kids try to hide. I felt something tighten in my chest, not anger, not yet, just a cold, steady disbelief. The boyfriend muttered something under his breath, something about boundaries and my stuff, and walked back out like he'd solved some great problem by ruining a harmless moment. The room felt smaller after he left. My nephew kept his eyes on the ground, and in that silence I felt my own mood harden, like someone had flicked a switch inside me. This was going to be a problem. And I wasn't about to let him ruin our time together. For a long moment after he left the room, the silence just sat there, heavy, awkward, wrong. The TV screen had already faded back to the home menu, the controller prompt blinking like it was waiting for us, but neither of us moved. My nephew kept staring at his hands like he was still holding the controller that had been yanked away. He wasn't crying. He never cried over stuff like this. But his jaw was tight, and he kept swallowing hard, the way kids do when they're trying not to look upset. "Hey," I said softly, "you didn't do anything wrong." He nodded without looking up. "It's fine," he mumbled, even though every kid says it's fine, when it's absolutely not. Something in me settled then. Not anger exactly, but a kind of steady, simmering resolve. I've never been the type to get into yelling matches or throw punches. But take away my nephew's joy out of pure pettiness, embarrass him, make him feel small, yeah, that flips a switch in me. I leaned back against the couch, staring at the hallway where the boyfriend disappeared, and all I could think was, okay, if this is how he wants to play it, then I'll play it better. I pushed myself up and grabbed my wallet from the coffee table. "Come on," I said, "put your shoes on." My nephew blinked. "Where are we going?" "Out," I said simply, "just for a bit." He perked up immediately. Kids can sense when something is shifting, even if they don't know what it is. He scrambled to find his sneakers while I walked into the kitchen where my sister was loading dishes into the sink. "Hey," I said casually, "I'm taking him out for an hour." She looked up at me for a half-second too long, long enough to know she suspected something was off, but she didn't ask, didn't pry, she just nodded, "Okay, be safe." I gave her a small smile, but inside the decision was already locked in. If her boyfriend wanted to be territorial over his controller, his console, his everything, then fine, I'd just remove the his from the equation. The moment we stepped outside, the air felt different. Cooler, calmer, almost like the universe itself was telling me I was doing the right thing. My nephew walked beside me, still a little quiet, but his steps grew lighter with every block we put between us and the house. By the time we pulled into the Gamestop parking lot, he finally broke the silence. "Are we just looking?" he asked cautiously, like he didn't want to hope for too much. I winked. "We'll see." Inside, the store greeted us with its familiar buzz, bright fluorescent lights, the faint smell of plastic and cardboard, shelves packed with games stacked like colorful little promises. The sound of some game trailer played on loop from a mounted TV, explosions and heroic music echoing overhead. My nephew lit up instantly. It was like flipping a switch. His shoulders straightened, his eyes widened, and he walked faster than me, stopping right in front of the wall of accessories. "Uncle, look," he said, pointing at the controllers on display. "This one lights up when you play, and this one's the pro one, and oh, look at this color." His excitement was contagious. It washed away everything that had happened in the living room just minutes earlier. I approached the display casually, hands in my pockets. "So," I said, "which two do you want?" He snapped his head toward me so fast I'm surprised he didn't get whiplash. "Two?" "Yep," I said, "your pick." He studied my face, as if checking for any sign I was joking. When he didn't find one, his whole expression exploded into this huge, unfiltered grin. He grabbed one blue controller and one black, holding them like fragile treasure, afraid they'd vanish if he blinked. We walked to the counter, and the cashier raised an eyebrow at the speed of the purchase. "Big gaming night?" she asked. "Something like that," I said, handing over my card. Walking back to the car, my nephew kept staring at the Gamestop bag, the controllers inside rattling softly with every step. "You didn't have to do this," he said quietly. I put a hand on his shoulder. "I know," I said, "but I wanted to." And in that moment, the plan for the night started forming in my mind. Not out of anger anymore, but out of the urge to give him something no one could take away. When we got back, the house was quiet, too quiet. My nephew and I slipped inside, Gamestop bag crinkling softly in his hand. He looked almost nervous, like he was worried someone might jump out and demand to search us. I nudged him with my elbow. "Relax," I whispered. "We're just upgrading our gaming experience." That earned me a small laugh. We headed straight to the living room. I unpacked the new controllers, peeling off the plastic wrap with that satisfying crinkle. My nephew hovered beside me, bouncing on his toes with excitement. The PS4 booted up, screen washing the room in blue light. He held the new controller with both hands like it was made of crystal. "It feels so smooth," he said, clicking the buttons experimentally. We were mid-setup, syncing the controllers, when I heard the familiar heavy footsteps again, coming fast like a storm rolling in. The boyfriend walked into the room with that same irritated expression he always wore when things weren't going his way. "What are you doing?" he demanded. I didn't even look up, setting up my controllers. He scoffed, stepping closer. My controller was fine. I finally turned to face him, calm as ever, and held up the receipt with a flick of my wrist. "These are mine. He's not touching your stuff." My nephew looked at me with this tiny flicker of relief, like he wasn't used to someone standing in front of him instead of in front of the guy yelling. But of course the boyfriend couldn't let it go. "Well," he said, chest puffing out like something was about to get serious, "it's my PS4. You can't just—" "Oh," I interrupted, eyebrows raised. "Your PS4? His face twitched. He thought he'd won something, like calling dibs on the console was some big power move. My nephew deflated a little beside me, already bracing for another ruined night. The fun evaporated from his expression, replaced by quiet resignation. And that did it. I felt something click inside me, smooth, calm, decisive. If he wanted to claim the console, fine. I stood up, grabbed my keys from the coffee table, and looked at my nephew. "Get your shoes," I said. "We're going back out." The boyfriend opened his mouth again, gearing up to make another point, but I didn't give him the chance, because I already knew what we were buying next. The second we stepped outside, the air felt colder, sharper, like the night itself was nodding along with my decision. My nephew trailed beside me, confused but hopeful, tugging at the zipper of his hoodie. "Uncle, are we in trouble?" he asked quietly. I stopped halfway to the car and bent down a little so we were eye level. "No," I said firmly, "but I'm not letting anyone ruin our time. Not tonight, not ever." He nodded, still unsure, but he climbed into the passenger seat without another word. The drive was only 10 minutes, but it felt like a small adventure. Streetlights flashing across his face, the soft hum of the radio, that electric sense of anticipation buzzing in the air. When we pulled into the GameStop parking lot again, he looked at me like I might have lost my mind. "Wait, again, yep," I said, stepping out, round two. Inside, the staff recognized us immediately. The same cashier from earlier raised her eyebrows with a half laugh. "Back already? Forget something?" "Nope," I said. "Need something bigger this time." My nephew's eyes widened as I walked straight to the console section. There it was, pre-owned PS4, neatly boxed, affordable enough to justify and powerful enough to make a point. I rested my hand on the box and looked at him. "What do you think?" He swallowed hard. "For me? For us, I corrected, but it's going home with you. The way his face lit up, man, I wish I could have bottled that. Pure joy, shock, disbelief, all wrapped into one. He pressed his hands to his cheeks like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Uncle, we don't have to, I know, I said softly, but we're doing it anyway. The cashier rang it up, giving us both this amused, approving smile, like she already knew the story without us telling a word. When she placed the bag on the counter, my nephew reached for it with both hands, holding it close to his chest like it was something sacred. Walking out of the store, PS4 box tucked under his arm, he kept shaking his head in stunned silence, and I realized this wasn't just about gaming anymore. It was about showing him what it felt like to be backed up, really backed up, by someone who cared. When I woke up the next morning, there was an unusual stillness in my room. It wasn't the peaceful kind. It was the type that makes your chest feel heavy before you even open your eyes. My phone lay next to me, face down, as if it, too, didn't want to face the day. I picked it up anyway, hoping maybe she had texted, maybe she had said something, anything, but the screen was empty, no missed calls, no messages, nothing. I stared at it for a long moment before letting out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. It's strange how silence can feel louder than a scream. I sat up, rubbing my face with both hands as last night's memories flashed back. Her voice trembling, her accusations, her sudden coldness, that look in her eyes that didn't belong to the girl I once knew. And worst of all, the final realization that she had gone to someone she used to hate. Just to hurt me, I stood and walked to the window. The world outside looked normal. People moving, cars passing, life continuing as if nothing had collapsed. But inside me, everything felt different. The trust, the warmth, the quiet little dreams we had shared. They all seemed to fade like fog in sunlight. I caught my reflection in the glass. My eyes looked tired, older somehow. I whispered to myself, why? Why did she choose revenge over love? There was no answer, of course. Sometimes life doesn't give answers. It just gives consequences. I walked to the kitchen, made tea, and sat at the table staring at the steam rising from the cup. For a moment, I wished time could freeze, just long enough for me to process everything, but time never stops for broken hearts. It keeps moving, dragging you with it, so I breathed, slow and deep. And for the first time since the fight, I admitted something painful but true. She isn't coming back, and maybe she doesn't want to. The words stung, but they also felt strangely freeing. The road ahead was still uncertain, still painful, but at least I had taken the first step. Later that night, after the second Gamestop run, I sat on the couch staring at my nephew as he carefully inspected the new PS4 box. He turned it over in his hands, read the labels, and then gave me this small, awestruck smile. It was quiet, contained, but it carried so much weight relief, excitement, and maybe a little disbelief that someone actually had his back. I watched him and felt the calm before the storm, the moment right before a big plan takes shape, and you know you can't back down. His eyes, shining in the glow of the TV, reminded me why I was doing this, not for revenge exactly, but for him, for the joy that had been snatched from him, however briefly. I leaned back, letting my thoughts run ahead. Tomorrow, we'd go all in, not just controllers, not just a console. He deserved more. He deserved a space where no one could ever make him feel small or powerless again. I could almost see it in my mind, the den transformed into his sanctuary, a command center of games, tech, and pure, unspoiled fun. I could feel the tension simmering in the back of my mind, too, the knowledge that her boyfriend would try again, that he'd probably escalate, but this time we'd be untouchable, receipts, proof, all of it in our favor. And my sister, she'd let us do it. She trusted me, which was all the permission I needed. I looked over at my nephew, who had already started lining up the new games next to the console, his tiny hands steady, almost ceremonious. He didn't ask questions, didn't even notice the planning racing through my head. He just trusted that Uncle had it covered. Tomorrow, I whispered under my breath, mostly to myself, we go bigger. He glanced at me and grinned. Can't wait, and in that moment I knew he had no idea how far I was willing to go, the quiet thrill of plotting, the anticipation of seeing his reaction. It was almost as satisfying as the games themselves. Because tomorrow we wouldn't just play, tomorrow we would win. The next morning the world felt alive in a way it hadn't the day before. I could almost taste the excitement as my nephew practically vibrated in the passenger seat, asking a million questions at once. Are we really doing this? Are we getting everything, even a new TV? I kept my eyes on the road, smiling at his enthusiasm, the same mixture of disbelief and hope still dancing in his eyes. Yes, I said simply. Everything you need to make this your gaming kingdom. First stop, Gamestop. I let him pick his games, 10 in total, maybe more, and a couple of extra controllers for good measure. He was careful, deliberate, holding each case up and reading the back like a connoisseur. I paid no attention to the price. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about making sure he had everything he needed to feel safe, happy, and in control of his own little world. Next, Walmart. I wheeled him down the TV aisle, letting him pick the 42-inch screen he'd been eyeing online for weeks. He bounced on his heels like a kid on Christmas morning, and I couldn't help but grin. We found a TV stand sturdy enough to hold the console and accessories, and I imagined how it would look back at my sister's house. Organized, neat, everything in its place, and most importantly, his. He carried the boxes like he was protecting fragile treasure, making sure to thank me quietly between excited bursts of "Can you believe this?" and "Is this really happening?" The car was loaded down to the brim, barely able to close the trunk, but neither of us cared. The anticipation had already transformed the trip into something more than just shopping. It was a mission, a quiet victory in the making. On the ride back, I watched his face light up as the sunlight caught the edges of the boxes through the rear window. He didn't need to say anything. I could see it in every little movement, every glance. He knew this was special, that this time no one could take it away from him, and in that moment I felt a quiet satisfaction, the kind that comes from knowing you've done something right, something lasting. Tomorrow, the den would become a sanctuary, and I couldn't wait to see his reaction. When we got back to my sister's house, the weight of the boxes in the car suddenly felt worth it. The den had never looked so alive in my mind. I could see the space transformed already, bright, organized, and buzzing with possibility. My nephew practically danced around the car, eyes wide as he helped me carry the first TV box inside. "Uncle, are we really setting it up today?" he asked, voice trembling with excitement. "Yep," I said, grinning. "You ready?" He nodded so vigorously his hair practically bounced. I handed him one end of the TV stand, and together we lugged it into the den. My sister peeked in briefly, giving me that half-smile of curiosity and mild amusement, and I ignored the slight twinge of guilt for turning the den upside down. This was for him, not her. We assembled the stand, screwing in bolts and sliding panels into place. The room filled with the satisfying clink of metal and plastic. I could hear my nephew's small gasps as he carefully positioned the PS4, controllers, and games on their respective shelves, almost ceremoniously. He treated each piece like it was precious, which to me it was. Then came the TV. We lifted it onto the stand, and he stepped back, blinking up at the enormous screen. His hands went to his face, his mouth slightly open in awe. This is ours," he whispered. "Yours," I corrected. "We just get to play together." Setting up the console, connecting the cables, organizing the games, I felt a calm satisfaction settle over me. The chaos of the past couple of days, the yelling, the controller snatching, the petty fight, melted away. Here, in this little corner of the house, we were safe. We were in control. Finally, we plugged everything in. The blue glow of the screen filled the room. My nephew sank into the beanbag, controller in hand, grinning ear to ear. I sank onto the couch beside him, leaning back, and let myself take it in. He was oblivious to everything else, completely absorbed, happy, safe. And I couldn't help the small, wicked little grin that spread across my face, seeing the man-child boyfriend's powerlessness in my mind even from afar. This was more than gaming. This was victory, quiet, satisfying, and entirely ours. We had just finished plugging everything in when the front door clicked. I barely had time to glance at my nephew before the boyfriend appeared in the doorway, his face a storm cloud in human form. I could feel the tension spike immediately, like static electricity in the air. His eyes scanned the den and froze mid-scan, then, slowly, like some cartoon character realizing the world had betrayed him, his jaw tightened. That's everything," he stammered, voice sharp and incredulous. I leaned back in the couch, hands behind my head, giving him a slow, deliberate look. "Yep, everything, bought, set up, ready to play." He flinched as if my calmness physically hurt him, but, that's my console, my TV, my everything. I didn't say a word. I just let him stew, because he was the one who had set the rules before. Control equals power, and now the receipts, the proof, the careful planning. It was all in our favor. My sister appeared behind him, arms crossed, eyes steady. "It's fine," she said, her voice calm but firm. "He bought it. I pay for the internet. You don't get to complain." For a moment, I swear, he looked like he might combust. He stomped to the corner of the living room, flopping into the chair there as if the universe had personally betrayed him. Arms crossed, scowl locked in place, eyes glaring daggers at everything we had done, he sat, and then he stayed 4 hours of pure, unadulterated fuming. We could hear him muttering, shaking his head, grumbling about fairness and boundaries. Meanwhile, my nephew was completely absorbed in the new setup, building ramps, blasting through matches, laughing and shouting without a care in the world. My sister smirked from time to time, hiding it behind her hand, clearly enjoying the sight of him stewing. I sat there too, a quiet smile spreading across my face, letting it all sink in. Every frustrated grunt, every clenched jaw, every muttered complaint, it was poetry, justice in the form of joystick clicks and glowing blue light. For the first time in a long time, the living room felt like our space, safe, fun, untouchable, and watching him fume while my nephew thrived, God, it felt good. By the time evening rolled around, the den had fully transformed into a little world of its own. The blue glow of the TV bathed everything in soft light, the hum of the PS4 filling the air like background music to our victory. My nephew was sprawled across the beanbag, controller in hand, completely absorbed in his game. Every now and then, he'd glance at me with that excited grin, like he couldn't believe all of this was actually happening. "Watch this, Uncle," he shouted, building ramps faster than I could process, trying to get me to follow along. I laughed, pressing buttons with the desperate hope that I wasn't completely embarrassing myself. Truthfully, I was still hopeless at building, but that didn't matter. The joy radiating off him was infectious, and for a moment nothing else existed. No boyfriend, no tension, no past frustration, just us and the game. Then my sister joined in. She plopped down next to me, picking up a controller effortlessly. Her calm, steady hands navigated the game in a way that made me look like a total amateur, but it didn't matter. She laughed every time I messed up, teasing me gently, and my nephew's laughter bounced off the walls. It felt perfect. From the corner of my eye I could see him, the boy friend, still sulking, still scowling, clearly miserable, but we ignored him, and I loved that. The room had shifted, the balance of power had changed. We weren't just playing, we were taking back control of our time, our space, our fun. Hours passed like minutes. Matches were won and lost. Controllers thumped against beanbags, and we shouted tips and trash talk at each other, completely absorbed in our little universe. Every so often, my sister would glance at me with a smile that said this was the right thing to do. By the time the night ended, I was exhausted but elated. My nephew fell asleep on the couch, clutching his controller like a trophy. My sister leaned back, content, and I sat quietly, letting the hum of the console and the glow of the TV sink into my bones. Tonight, the den wasn't just a room, it was a fortress, a sanctuary, a place where laughter and joy couldn't be taken away. And for the first time in a long time, everything felt right. After my nephew finally drifted off to sleep, curled up on the couch with his controller tucked under his arm like a prized treasure, I stayed in the den a little longer. The room was quiet now, save for the faint hum of the PS4 and the soft glow of the TV, still casting blue light across the walls. Everything was in place, organized, neat, ready for another day of gaming, but more than that, it felt peaceful. I sank into the couch beside him, letting out a long, slow breath. The adrenaline from the day's chaos, the trips to Gamestop, the wrestling with receipts, the tension with the boyfriend, was finally ebbing. And yet I couldn't stop replaying the earlier hours in my mind, the boyfriend's scowl, the 4 hours of him sitting in silent fury, my sister's barely contained smirk, and my nephew's sheer, unfiltered joy. It struck me then how small victories can feel monumental when they protect someone you care about. The look on my nephew's face today, the way he laughed and played without fear of being stopped or scolded, that was worth every late-night trip, every bit of patience, every dollar spent. I glanced around the room, taking in the den transformed into a gaming sanctuary. Everything we'd set up wasn't just about games or consoles. It was about reclaiming space, creating a safe little world where my nephew could be completely himself. No interruptions, no pettiness, no one telling him he couldn't enjoy something that was his by right. For a moment, I allowed myself a quiet, private smile. Maybe it was petty, maybe it was indulgent, but it felt good. Really good. I leaned back further and watched my nephew sleep, peaceful at last. My sister passed by the doorway, giving me a glance that said everything. Thank you, I knew you'd make it right. The den was still, the console silent, and the chaos of the day had vanished. Yet the sense of victory lingered, soft and steady. I knew tomorrow would bring more games, more laughter, and more fun. But tonight, I let myself sit in the quiet pride of knowing we had won in the most important way, together. The next morning, I was sipping coffee in the kitchen when my sister appeared, bleary-eyed but with an intensity I hadn't seen in years. She closed the door gently behind her, leaned against the frame, and took a deep breath like she was bracing herself. I need to talk to you," she said, voice shaky. I set my mug down, curiosity piqued. "Sure, what's up?" She hesitated, looking at the floor for a moment before meeting my eyes, and in that moment I realized something had shifted. The weight of yesterday, the boyfriend's tantrums, the late-night shopping trips, the den transformation, it had all landed somewhere inside her, somewhere she hadn't let herself feel until now. I think I see it," she said slowly, carefully. "The patterns, the choices, the men I pick and how it affects him, my son, how it affects us. I think I've been letting the wrong people hurt the wrong people for too long." I nodded, keeping quiet, letting her pour it out. There's a certain strength in letting someone realize something on their own, and watching her, I could see the walls she had built around herself crumbling bit by bit. "I called you this morning because I need to say I'm sorry," she continued, voice trembling now. "Not to you, not just to you, to him, for letting him feel small, for letting someone make him feel like he didn't matter." I felt my chest tighten, a mix of pride and relief washing over me. This wasn't just a conversation, it was a turning point. The sister I loved, the woman who had always struggled to put herself first, was finally starting to understand, and it wasn't because of lectures or nagging, it was because she saw it, she felt it. I start therapy in 3 weeks," she admitted, tears brimming in her eyes. "I'm going to be better for him, for me, and I'm going to make sure he knows that someone has his back." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand gently. "That's all anyone can ask for," I said softly. And in that moment, I knew that the chaos of the past couple of days, the pettiness, the shopping, the triumphs, had done more than just create a gaming paradise. It had sparked a quiet, powerful shift in our family. For the first time in a long time, I felt hope. By the time afternoon rolled around, the den had settled into a quiet hum of comfort. The TV glowed softly, casting long, warm shadows across the room. My nephew sat cross-legged on the floor, controller in hand, completely absorbed in his game. Every now and then, he'd glance up, grin at me, and yell some excited commentary at the screen. The sound of his laughter filled the room, richer and freer than it had in months. I leaned back in the couch, hands behind my head, letting the scene wash over me. He didn't notice the boyfriend sulking in the corner anymore. He didn't notice the past chaos. All that mattered to him was the glow of the screen, the click of the buttons, and the rush of a game finally being his, without interruptions, without someone else's authority looming over him. My sister peeked in from the doorway, giving me a small nod, a silent acknowledgement of the shift we'd created together. I smiled back. It was subtle, but it said everything. The tension had eased, the lessons had landed, and the day's chaos had settled into calm. I watched my nephew as he built ramps, dodged opponents, and celebrated virtual victories with abandon. He was thriving, completely absorbed, completely safe in his little kingdom of blue light and digital adventure. It struck me then how something so simple, games, controllers, a TV, could mean so much. It wasn't about the objects themselves. It was about creating a space where he could be himself, without fear of judgment, without petty interruptions, without feeling powerless. The boyfriend had tried to control the room, to assert dominance over our joy, but in the end it didn't matter. We had reclaimed it for my nephew, for us. I leaned back further, letting the soft glow of the screen warm my face. For the first time in a long while, the house felt like home in the way it was meant to, safe, joyful, and filled with laughter. And as I watched him play, completely absorbed in his new world, I felt a quiet satisfaction that had nothing to do with winning or losing a game. It was the knowledge that, for once, we had protected what mattered most, and that feeling was priceless.